Welcome to True Betrayal Stories, where secrets are exposed, lies unravel, and justice is served. If you love shocking betrayal stories and satisfying revenge, don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you never miss an update. Caleb never imagined that the love of his life would bring him so much pain. They had been together since high school, teenage sweethearts who promised each other forever. They built a life, shared dreams, and created a family. Two beautiful children, a cozy home in the suburbs, and a love that seemed unbreakable. But sometimes even the strongest bonds are tested. It all started on a seemingly normal Friday evening. Caleb had just come home from work, exhausted but happy to see his family. Olivia, his wife of 12 years, greeted him with a soft kiss on the cheek, while their two kids, Max and Lily, ran up to hug him tightly. Caleb cherished these little moments. They made all the hard work worth it. After dinner, once the kids were tucked into bed, Caleb settled down on the couch with Olivia. She poured them both a glass of wine, something they hadn't done in a while. Caleb smiled, thinking she wanted a romantic night together, but something about her demeanor seemed off. She was quiet, too quiet. Caleb glanced at her, noticing how she kept nervously twirling the stem of her wine glass. It wasn't like Olivia to be so distant. He reached over and gently touched her hand. "Everything okay, babe?" he asked, concern lacing his voice. Olivia hesitated, biting her lip before finally meeting his eyes. "Caleb," she began slowly, "have you ever thought about trying something new?" He frowned, not quite understanding what she meant. "Something new? Like a vacation or—" "No," she interrupted softly, her voice almost a whisper. "Like a new kind of relationship. An open relationship." Caleb froze, his mind struggling to process the words she had just uttered. He stared at her, waiting for her to laugh or say it was a joke, but she didn't. Instead, she took another sip of wine, looking down at her hands. "You're not serious," he finally managed to say, though his voice was more uncertain than he intended. Olivia looked at him with a mixture of guilt and determination. "I've been thinking about it for a while now. We've been together for so long, and I just feel like something's missing. I talked to Jenna and some of the girls from the book club, and they've been really open about their own experiences. Jenna swears that opening up saved her marriage. I just thought, maybe it's something we could consider." Caleb's heart pounded in his chest as a wave of nausea washed over him. Jenna. Of course. She'd always been the one with radical ideas about relationships and freedom. Caleb had never liked how she influenced Olivia, but he never thought it would lead to something like this. "So, you want to sleep with other men?" he asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. Olivia's face flushed, and she immediately shook her head. "It's not just about that. It's about experiencing new things, exploring ourselves, and maybe reigniting what we used to have." Caleb couldn't help the bitter laugh that escaped his lips. "You think sharing each other with strangers is going to fix our marriage? Are you even listening to yourself?" Olivia's eyes filled with tears, and she wiped one away quickly. "I'm not saying I don't love you, Caleb. I do, but I feel trapped sometimes, like we're stuck in a routine. I want to feel alive again." He couldn't believe what he was hearing. 12 years of loyalty, commitment, and sacrifice, and now she wanted to throw it all away for some fleeting sense of excitement. Caleb clenched his jaw, fighting the urge to yell. He needed to keep calm, even though his heart felt like it was being crushed in a vice. "Have you already done it?" he asked, his voice trembling. "No," Olivia responded immediately, looking hurt that he would even suggest that. "I would never cheat on you, Caleb. That's why I'm bringing it up now, because I want us to talk about it first." Caleb didn't know whether to believe her or not. Trust was something they had built carefully over the years, but now he felt it cracking beneath his feet. "I can't do this, Olivia. I can't share you. I can't pretend that letting you be with other men won't destroy me. You're my wife. We made vows. What happened to that?" She looked down, guilt and shame flickering across her face. "I know. I just thought maybe it would make things better. I didn't want to hurt you." Caleb took a long breath, trying to clear his thoughts. He felt like his world was spinning out of control. He wanted to scream, to cry, to beg her to change her mind. But he couldn't. He wouldn't beg for her love. Not when she was the one trying to throw it away. He stood up abruptly, setting his glass down harder than he meant to. I need some air, he mumbled, heading out to the backyard. The cool evening breeze hit his face, but it didn't ease the fire raging inside him. How could she even consider something like that? How could she risk everything they'd built together for the sake of some fleeting thrill? He pulled out his phone and dialed Marcus, needing to vent to someone who would understand. Hey man, what's up? Marcus answered, sounding upbeat. Caleb swallowed the lump in his throat. Not great. Olivia just dropped a bomb on me. Wants to open our marriage, he said, his voice strained. There was a long pause before Marcus responded. You've got to be kidding me. Olivia, are you serious? Dead serious. She said she's feeling trapped and that Jenna's been feeding her ideas about open relationships. Marcus let out a low whistle. Man, I never liked Jenna. She's always been trouble. You good? You want me to come over? Nah, Caleb replied, rubbing his temples. I just needed to tell someone before I lost my mind. Listen, bro, whatever you decide, just remember, you don't owe her anything if she's not respecting you. Take care of yourself first. Caleb nodded even though Marcus couldn't see it. Yeah, I hear you. He hung up and took a few more deep breaths, staring up at the night sky. Maybe it was time to really consider what he wanted, what he needed. If Olivia was willing to risk everything just to feel alive, then maybe she had already made her choice. Caleb spent the rest of the night outside on the porch, lost in thought. The once comforting sound of crickets now felt like a deafening reminder of his crumbling marriage. He couldn't wrap his mind around the idea that Olivia wanted to explore other relationships. The woman he fell in love with, the mother of his children, how could she even consider such a thing? He thought back to the early days of their relationship. Olivia had been his rock, his biggest supporter through college and his first job. They shared dreams and built a life together. Somewhere along the way, though, it seemed like they had lost sight of each other. But even so, he couldn't imagine being with anyone else. Nor could he stomach the thought of her being with another man. His phone vibrated again, and he glanced down to see another message from Marcus. You hanging in there, man? Seriously, if you need to talk, I'm here. Caleb hesitated before replying. Still trying to wrap my head around it. I just never thought she'd even consider this. It's like I don't know her anymore. Marcus replied almost instantly. People change, but it doesn't mean you have to put up with it. You're allowed to stand your ground, Caleb. Don't let her guilt you into something that breaks you. Caleb knew his friend was right. He couldn't just sit back and let his marriage morph into something he didn't recognize. After some time alone, he finally went inside, where Olivia was still sitting on the couch, nursing her glass of wine. Her eyes were red and puffy, evidence that she had been crying too. Caleb, she started, but he held up his hand to stop her. I can't do this tonight. I just need some space to think, he said, his tone devoid of anger, but filled with exhaustion. Olivia didn't try to stop him as he walked past her and headed to their bedroom. Lying in bed, his thoughts raced, but exhaustion eventually pulled him under. The next morning, he woke up with a splitting headache and an ache in his chest that wouldn't go away. As he made breakfast for the kids, Olivia approached him cautiously. I'm sorry about last night, she whispered. Caleb didn't respond immediately. He focused on flipping pancakes while Lily and Max chattered happily at the table. When the kids finally ran off to the living room with their plates, Caleb turned to face Olivia. Why now? He asked, his tone low but firm. Why bring this up now, after 12 years of marriage, after everything we've built? Olivia looked away, her shoulders tense. I guess I just feel like we're stuck, like we're going through the motions without really feeling anything anymore, she admitted. Caleb couldn't help but scoff. So your solution is to bring other people into our marriage? How is that supposed to fix anything? Her lip quivered, and for a moment, he thought she might break down. I thought maybe it would help us find excitement again. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just feel like I'm suffocating. He took a deep breath, trying to suppress his frustration. And you think the answer is to sleep with someone else? To risk our family? Our kids? Olivia wiped away a stray tear and nodded. I know it sounds selfish, but I just want to feel something. Something real. Caleb shook his head, unable to comprehend how her desire for something real could involve betraying their vows. You don't even realize what you're asking of me, he muttered, his voice breaking. I just wanted to talk about it. I wasn't saying I'd do it without your approval, she tried to reason. But the fact that you're even considering it tells me a lot. Caleb replied coldly. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw someone he barely recognized. A woman so wrapped up in her own dissatisfaction that she couldn't see the devastation her words had caused. Olivia, I love you, but I can't be in a marriage where I have to share you with someone else. That's not love. That's not what we promised each other. Tears streamed down her face now, and she didn't try to hide them. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice cracking. Caleb didn't respond. He just grabbed his jacket and left the house, needing to clear his head before he said something he couldn't take back. He found himself driving aimlessly, the world outside the car window a blur. His thoughts were a chaotic mess. Love, betrayal, pain, anger, all twisted together in an unbreakable knot. He didn't know where he was going, but eventually he found himself parked at a nearby lake where they used to go for family picnics. The place held so many good memories, and now it just felt tainted. Caleb sat on a weathered wooden bench by the water, burying his face in his hands. How had it come to this? How had the woman he loved for more than a decade suddenly become someone so unrecognizable? He was startled when his phone rang. Glancing at the screen, he saw Marcus's name and hesitated before answering. Hey, he greeted, his voice rough from holding back tears. Where are you, man? I've been calling, Marcus said, worry evident in his tone. Just clearing my head, Caleb replied, trying to sound normal. Marcus didn't push him to talk, just stayed on the line, offering silent support. Finally, Caleb spoke up. She says she feels trapped, like we've lost our spark, thinks sleeping with other people will make things better. Marcus let out a low growl. That's bullshit. If she feels stuck, she should be working on it with you, not inviting other guys into your bed. You deserve better than that. Caleb sighed heavily, grateful for his friend's loyalty. I just don't know what to do, he admitted. Marcus paused before replying. You gotta ask yourself if you can live with this, if you can really accept it and still be happy. Because if not, maybe it's time to rethink things. Caleb knew Marcus was right, but the thought of letting go of his marriage, of his family, was almost too much to bear. He stayed by the lake until the sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. It was beautiful, yet bittersweet. He couldn't avoid the inevitable forever. He had to confront this reality head-on, no matter how much it hurt. Caleb stayed by the lake for what felt like hours, his mind caught in a whirlwind of emotions. He couldn't bear the thought of losing his family, but the idea of staying and pretending everything was fine seemed even worse. Was he supposed to just live with the knowledge that his wife wanted to be with other men? That she thought it would somehow bring them closer? As the sky darkened and the air grew colder, Caleb finally decided to head back home. He couldn't run away from this. He needed to face it head-on, no matter how painful it was. He drove back slowly, his thoughts swirling in an endless loop. When he finally pulled into the driveway, he saw Olivia sitting on the porch steps, wrapped in a blanket, waiting for him. She looked up as his car headlights illuminated her face, and he could see the worry etched into her features. He stepped out of the car and she immediately approached him, her voice tentative and soft. Caleb, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to push you away, she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. He didn't respond immediately, just looked at her with a guarded expression. Do you even realize what you're asking of me? He finally said, his tone calm but full of pain. She bit her lip, hesitating before responding. I know it sounds selfish, and maybe it is. I feel like we're in a rut, like I'm losing a part of myself. Caleb couldn't help the bitterness that seeped into his voice. So you think sleeping with other men is going to fix that? You think that's going to make you feel whole again? Olivia wiped her eyes, trying to keep herself composed. I just wanted to feel something different, something exciting. I thought you might understand. He shook his head, utterly baffled. Understand what? That you're willing to throw away 12 years of marriage because you're bored? That you're willing to risk breaking up our family because Jenna put stupid ideas in your head? Olivia looked hurt, but Caleb didn't care. He was done sugarcoating his feelings. He needed her to understand just how much damage her words had caused. What about us, Olivia? What about our kids? Did you even think about how this would affect them? She broke down, sobbing into her hands. I never meant to hurt you, or the kids. I just thought maybe we could figure something out together. I never wanted it to come to this. Caleb took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. If you really felt that way, why didn't you come to me sooner? Why did you let Jenna fill your head with ideas that could destroy everything we've built? She didn't have an answer, just more tears and regret. Caleb felt his anger simmer down, replaced by a deep, aching sadness. I can't be with someone who's willing to throw me away like that, he said, his voice breaking. Olivia looked up, panic flashing in her eyes. No, please, don't say that. I love you. I made a mistake. A stupid, selfish mistake. Please don't give up on us. Caleb wanted to believe her. He wanted to pretend that everything could go back to normal, that they could just forget this ever happened. But he knew that wasn't possible. The trust they had built over 12 years had been shattered, and he didn't know how to piece it back together. I need time to think, he finally said, his voice hollow. Olivia nodded, wiping her face and taking a shaky breath. I understand. Just, please don't give up on me, she whispered. Caleb didn't respond. He walked past her and into the house, his heart feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. He went to check on the kids, finding them asleep in their beds, peaceful and blissfully unaware of the storm brewing between their parents. He leaned against the doorframe of Max's room, his eyes misting over as he watched his son sleep. How could he protect them from the fallout of this? How could he keep their world from crumbling when his own felt like it was falling apart? The next few days passed in a tense, uneasy silence. Caleb kept his distance from Olivia, avoiding long conversations and focusing on taking care of the kids. Olivia tried to make things right, cooking his favorite meals, being extra attentive, and constantly apologizing. But Caleb remained distant. He couldn't just forgive and forget, not when the pain was still so raw. One evening, while Caleb was folding laundry, his phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Yo, I've been thinking about what you said. Maybe you need a break. Clear your head. Take the kids for a weekend trip or something. Caleb considered the idea. Maybe some time away would give him the clarity he needed. He decided to take Marcus's advice and planned a small camping trip with the kids. They hadn't been camping in a while, and he figured it might be good for all of them to get some fresh air and escape the tension at home. When he told Olivia his plan, she looked surprised but didn't argue. That sounds like a good idea, she said softly. The kids will love it. Caleb nodded, not offering much else. He could see the sadness in her eyes, but he didn't have the energy to comfort her. He was too busy trying to hold himself together. The following weekend, Caleb packed up the car with camping gear and loaded the kids in. Olivia stood on the porch, waving goodbye with a forced smile, and Caleb gave her a short nod before driving off. As they made their way to the campsite, Caleb tried to shake off the heaviness in his chest. Max and Lily chattered excitedly about roasting marshmallows and telling ghost stories. Caleb forced himself to smile, not wanting his kids to see the sadness behind his eyes. When they finally reached the campsite, Caleb set up the tent while the kids explored the area. The scent of pine and the crisp mountain air did wonders for his soul, making him feel a bit lighter. For the first time in days, he felt like he could breathe again. That night, as they sat around the campfire roasting marshmallows, Lily asked innocently, Daddy, why is Mommy sad? Caleb hesitated, unsure how to answer. She just has a lot on her mind, sweetheart, he replied, keeping his tone gentle. Did you and Mommy fight? Max chimed in, his eyes full of curiosity. Caleb didn't want to lie, but he also didn't want to burden them with adult problems. Sometimes grown-ups don't always agree on things, he explained, but it's not your fault. Mommy and I both love you very much. Max seemed to accept the answer, but Lily remained thoughtful. Caleb hoped that was the end of it and that they could just enjoy the weekend without more questions. As the fire crackled and the stars shone brightly overhead, Caleb found himself feeling a sense of peace he hadn't felt in weeks. Maybe this was the beginning of healing, finding small moments of happiness even when life felt broken. Caleb woke up early the next morning to the soft rustling of leaves and the distant sound of birdsong. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a warm golden glow over the campsite. He stretched his arms and glanced over to see Max and Lily still curled up in their sleeping bags, peacefully sleeping without a care in the world. For a moment, Caleb just sat there, breathing in the crisp morning air and trying to soak in the calmness. It was moments like these that made him realize what he was fighting for, the happiness and stability of his children. No matter how broken he felt, he needed to be strong for them. As he started to prepare breakfast, he heard footsteps approaching and turned to see Max rubbing his eyes, yawning sleepily. "Morning, buddy," Caleb greeted him with a soft smile. "Morning, Dad," Max mumbled, still half asleep. "Are we making pancakes like last time?" Caleb chuckled. "No pancakes today, but we've got bacon and eggs. That good enough?" Max nodded enthusiastically, already perking up at the thought of breakfast. As they ate together around the campfire, Lily finally woke up and joined them, her hair a messy tangle. Caleb couldn't help but smile at how carefree they both looked. He wished he could freeze this moment, just him and his kids, without the weight of betrayal looming over them. Once breakfast was done, they spent the morning hiking along one of the trails. Max tried to climb every rock in sight, while Lily picked wildflowers and showed them to Caleb as if they were the rarest treasures on earth. It felt good to just be a dad, to forget about the problems waiting for him back home, even if only for a little while. After lunch, they set out to fish by the nearby lake. Caleb taught Max how to cast the line properly, while Lily kept giggling as her line tangled repeatedly. They didn't catch much, just a few small fish. But it didn't matter. What mattered was the laughter, the way his kids looked genuinely happy. As the afternoon wore on, Caleb found himself lost in thought again. He couldn't help but wonder what Olivia was doing at home. If she was regretting her decision, if she was feeling as broken as he was. Part of him hoped she was, but another part didn't want to care anymore. Max's excited voice snapped him out of his thoughts. "Dad, I caught one!" Max shouted, gripping the fishing rod with all his might as the line tugged against him. Caleb rushed over to help, guiding his son as they reeled in a small but lively fish. "You did it!" Caleb cheered, ruffling Max's hair as the boy beamed with pride. Lily clapped her hands excitedly. "Good job, Max!" They let the fish go after admiring it for a moment, and Max couldn't stop grinning. Seeing his son's excitement warmed Caleb's heart, reminding him that there was still joy to be found even in the midst of pain. That evening, they sat around the campfire once more, sharing stories and making s'mores. Max insisted on telling a ghost story that he made up on the spot, and Lily kept interrupting to add her own ridiculous plot twists. Caleb laughed more than he had in weeks, feeling grateful for these little moments of light in the darkness. When the kids finally fell asleep, exhausted from the day's adventures, Caleb stayed by the fire, poking at the glowing embers with a stick. He couldn't help but replay the past few weeks in his mind, Olivia's confession, her tears, the betrayal that cut him deeper than anything else ever had. The sound of his phone buzzing snapped him out of his thoughts. He picked it up and saw a message from Marcus. "How's the trip going? You hanging in there?" Caleb hesitated before replying. "It's been good for the kids. They're happy. I'm trying to focus on that." Marcus responded almost immediately. "That's good. You deserve a break, man. Just remember, whatever you decide about Olivia, it's gotta be what's best for you too. Don't sacrifice your happiness for someone who doesn't value it." Caleb stared at the message, feeling a pang of guilt. He knew Marcus was right. He couldn't keep pretending that everything would magically fix itself. Olivia had made her choices, and he needed to make his own. The next morning, they packed up and headed back home. Caleb couldn't help but feel a sense of dread as they approached the house. He wasn't sure what to expect, an apology, an argument, or just more awkward silence. When they pulled into the driveway, Olivia was waiting on the porch, her face lighting up as she saw them. Caleb kept his expression neutral, not wanting to give her false hope. "Hey," she greeted softly as Max and Lily rushed to hug her. "How was the trip?" "It was good," Caleb replied flatly, unloading the camping gear from the car. Olivia watched him with hesitant eyes, clearly unsure how to approach him. "Caleb, can we talk?" she finally asked. He didn't look at her as he responded. "Later," he muttered, "I need to get the kids settled." That evening, after the kids were in bed, Olivia approached him cautiously. "I missed you," she admitted, her voice trembling. Caleb didn't respond, just kept folding the laundry in front of him. "I've been thinking about everything," Olivia continued, "about how stupid and reckless I've been. I don't know what came over me. I just felt like I was losing myself." Caleb glanced at her, his eyes cold and unforgiving. "So you thought losing me would fix that?" he asked bitterly. She swallowed hard, guilt written all over her face. "I never wanted to lose you. I was looking for something to make me feel alive again, but the thought of losing you made me realize how much I was taking you for granted. I'm so sorry, Caleb. Please don't give up on us. Caleb took a deep breath, considering her words. Part of him wanted to forgive her, to try and rebuild what they had. But another part couldn't shake the betrayal, couldn't forget the hurt that still lingered. How do I know you won't change your mind again? That you won't decide you're bored next month and start looking for excitement somewhere else? Olivia shook her head adamantly. No, I promise. I was just confused and lost. I didn't realize how much I was hurting you. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this, to prove to you that I still love you. Caleb remained silent, unsure of what to say. He wanted to believe her, but his heart wasn't ready to trust again. We'll see, he finally said, his voice low and uncertain. But it's going to take time, and it's going to take effort from you. Real effort. She nodded vigorously, wiping away tears. I'll do anything. Just please don't leave me. He didn't promise her anything. He couldn't. The wounds were too fresh, too raw. For now, he needed to focus on his kids and on figuring out how to move forward without losing himself in the process. As Olivia quietly left the room, Caleb leaned back, staring at the ceiling and wondering how he was ever supposed to put the pieces of his life back together. The days that followed were a strange blend of routine and uncertainty. Caleb went to work, took care of the kids, and handled the house chores while Olivia made a point of being extra attentive and helpful. She cooked his favorite meals, left little notes apologizing and expressing her love, and even surprised him with small gifts, a coffee from his favorite shop, a new shirt he had admired online. But despite her efforts, Caleb remained distant. He wasn't being cold out of spite. He just couldn't force himself to act like everything was normal. Trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt overnight, and no matter how many apologies Olivia offered, the damage was done. One evening, as Caleb sat in the backyard with a beer in hand, Marcus showed up unannounced, giving him a nod before taking a seat beside him. Figured you could use some company, Marcus said, cracking open a can of beer from the pack he'd brought. Caleb gave him a slight smile. You know me too well. They sat in silence for a while, the fading light casting long shadows across the yard. Finally, Marcus spoke up. How's it going with Olivia? Caleb shrugged, taking a long sip. She's trying, doing all the right things, but I can't just forget what she said. It's like there's this wall between us now, and I can't break through it. Marcus nodded knowingly. Makes sense. Betrayal's a tough pill to swallow. Even if it wasn't physical cheating, just the thought of it, that shit cuts deep. Caleb nodded, staring at his beer. Exactly. It wasn't about her actually doing it. It was that she even considered it. Like I wasn't enough. Marcus put a hand on his shoulder. You are enough. That's on her, not you. She's the one who let doubts and bad advice mess with her head. You've been a damn good husband and father. Don't let her insecurities make you question that. Caleb appreciated Marcus's words, but he still felt hollow inside. The fear that Olivia might one day feel the same way again gnawed at him. He couldn't live constantly wondering if she was secretly unhappy or craving something new. What would you do? Caleb finally asked. Marcus took a thoughtful swig of his beer. Honestly, I'd tell her exactly how it made you feel. No holding back. If she can't handle the truth, that's on her. You shouldn't have to tiptoe around your own feelings just to keep her from feeling guilty. Caleb considered that. Maybe he had been too guarded, too quiet about his pain. He'd been so focused on not making a scene or hurting Olivia that he'd bottled up his own emotions. Yeah, Caleb muttered, nodding slowly. Maybe it's time I lay it all out. The next evening, after putting the kids to bed, Caleb found Olivia in the living room folding laundry. She glanced up as he entered, and he could see the nervousness in her eyes. Can we talk? He asked, his tone firm but calm. She nodded, setting the laundry aside and giving him her full attention. I've been thinking about everything, Caleb started, struggling to find the right words. And I realize that I haven't been completely honest with you about how much this whole situation has hurt me. Olivia swallowed hard, clearly bracing herself for what was coming. When you told me you wanted an open relationship, it felt like you were telling me I wasn't good enough. Like I didn't make you happy anymore. Caleb continued. That broke something in me. You're supposed to be the one person I can trust with my heart. And instead, I'm left wondering if I was just a placeholder until you found something more exciting. Olivia's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't interrupt. Caleb needed to get this out. It's not just about the idea of sleeping with other people, he continued, his voice wavering. It's the fact that you even considered it, that you thought it was worth risking everything we built. I can't just brush that off. It makes me feel replaceable, disposable. Olivia wiped her tears, her voice trembling as she spoke. I didn't mean for you to feel that way. I was stupid and selfish, and I hate that I made you doubt your worth. You've given me so much, and I took it all for granted. I just, I lost sight of what really mattered. Caleb leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees as he looked at her. You say that now, but what's stopping you from feeling that way again in the future? How do I know you're not going to get bored and start looking for something new? She shook her head adamantly. No, never again. I was an idiot to let Jenna influence me. I was so wrapped up in trying to find excitement that I didn't see how much I was hurting you. I would never make that mistake again, I swear. Caleb looked at her for a long moment, trying to gauge the sincerity in her eyes. I need to know that you're serious about fixing this, he said firmly. It's not just about saying you're sorry, it's about rebuilding trust. And that's going to take time, maybe a long time. Olivia nodded, wiping her eyes. I understand. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Counseling, therapy, anything you need. I'll prove to you that I still love you. Caleb took a deep breath, the weight on his shoulders feeling a bit lighter. I'm not ready to promise anything yet, he admitted. I need time to heal, to figure out if I can move past this. I'll wait as long as it takes, Olivia whispered, her voice filled with remorse. The house felt quieter after that conversation, like the tension had finally started to ease. Caleb didn't know what the future held, but he felt a little more in control now that he'd finally voiced his pain. Later that night, as he lay in bed, Olivia quietly slipped in beside him. She didn't try to touch him or hold him. She just lay there, respecting his space. Caleb closed his eyes, not sure what to feel. Part of him wanted to reach out and hold her, to find comfort in her embrace. But another part was still too wounded to even think about that. For now, he focused on breathing, just taking one breath at a time, because he knew that finding his way through this would be a long, painful process. The following weeks were a slow and uneasy process of navigating the fragile space between them. Olivia continued to put in effort, making Caleb's favorite meals, planning small family outings, and always checking in on him without being overbearing. Caleb appreciated the effort, but his heart remained guarded. He didn't know if he was being too harsh by keeping his distance, but he couldn't force himself to act like everything was fine. Every time he looked at Olivia, he couldn't help but remember that crushing moment when she suggested an open relationship. It felt like a scar that refused to heal. One evening, as Caleb was going through his work emails on the couch, Olivia quietly approached and sat beside him. He didn't move away, but he kept his focus on the screen, unsure of what she wanted to say. Caleb, she started, her voice soft and hesitant. I've been thinking about something. I know I hurt you, and I know that words aren't enough. I looked up a marriage counselor. I thought maybe it would help if we had someone to talk to, someone to guide us through this. Caleb finally looked at her, surprised. You think counseling will fix this? He asked, not unkindly, but with a hint of skepticism. Olivia bit her lip, clearly unsure. I don't know, but I'm willing to try anything if it means fixing us. I'm willing to put in the work, Caleb. I don't want to lose you. He took a deep breath, considering her words. Part of him wanted to reject the idea outright. He didn't like the thought of airing their problems to a stranger, but another part of him wondered if it was the only way to move forward. You really think talking to someone will make a difference? Caleb asked, genuinely curious. Olivia nodded. It might help us understand each other better, and it might help you express how you feel without holding back. I know I haven't made it easy for you to talk to me lately. Caleb mulled it over for a few moments before giving a small nod. Fine, we'll try it, but I'm not promising anything. If I feel like it's not helping, I'm not going to force it. Olivia looked relieved, a small smile breaking through her worried expression. Thank you. I'll make the arrangements, she said softly. A week later, they found themselves sitting in the office of Dr. Michelle Parker, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a calm demeanor. The room was filled with soft lighting, comfortable chairs, and a serene atmosphere that didn't feel as intimidating as Caleb had expected. Dr. Parker greeted them warmly and invited them to sit. She glanced at her notes before looking up at them with an encouraging smile. Marriage counseling can feel daunting, especially when emotions are raw, she began, but I want you both to know that this is a safe space to express yourselves openly and honestly. My goal is not to assign blame, but to help you both communicate more effectively. Caleb felt Olivia's eyes on him, but he kept his gaze fixed on Dr. Parker. Why don't we start with you, Caleb? Can you share what brought you here today? The counselor asked gently. He hesitated, unsure of where to begin. After a moment, he took a deep breath. My wife suggested opening our marriage, he finally said, his tone tight. It blindsided me. We've been together for over a decade, and I never once thought we had a problem like that. I felt betrayed, like I wasn't enough for her anymore. Dr. Parker nodded empathetically. That must have been incredibly painful to hear. Have you been able to express your feelings to Olivia directly? Caleb glanced sideways at his wife, who was looking down at her lap. Not really, I didn't know how. I just felt numb, angry, and hurt. I didn't know how to process it. Olivia wiped at a tear that had slipped down her cheek. I never meant to hurt you, she whispered, her voice cracking. I was stupid and selfish, and I was looking for something that wasn't missing in the first place. I just thought, I don't know, that maybe changing things would reignite something between us. Dr. Parker leaned forward slightly. Olivia, why did you feel that your relationship needed that change? Can you identify where those feelings were coming from? Olivia hesitated before replying. I felt stuck, like we'd fallen into a routine. I kept hearing Jenna talk about how exploring new things saved her marriage, and I guess I just got it into my head that it might work for us too. I wasn't thinking clearly. I just wanted to feel something different without losing Caleb. Caleb clenched his jaw but remained silent. Dr. Parker looked between them thoughtfully. Sometimes we latch onto ideas when we're feeling disconnected, hoping they'll fix the problem. But the real issue often lies deeper. Olivia, did you discuss your feelings of disconnection with Caleb before suggesting an open marriage? Olivia shook her head, guilt evident on her face. No, I didn't know how to bring it up. I didn't want to make him feel like he wasn't enough, but I guess that's exactly what I ended up doing. Caleb let out a bitter laugh. Yeah, that's exactly what it felt like. Dr. Parker nodded. It sounds like both of you are carrying a lot of unspoken pain. Sometimes we look for drastic solutions when what we really need is communication. Caleb, how would you feel about exploring ways to reconnect that don't involve opening the marriage? He considered the question, unsure of his own feelings. I don't know. I guess I'd be willing to try. But the thought that she even considered it, it's like a wound that won't heal. Dr. Parker gave him an understanding smile. Trust takes time to rebuild, and it's okay to take things slow. The most important step is to rebuild emotional safety, where both of you feel heard and valued. It sounds like both of you want to make it work, but it's going to require effort from both sides. The session continued with Dr. Parker guiding them through open dialogue. Caleb found himself saying things he hadn't dared to admit before, how he felt humiliated, betrayed, and inadequate. Olivia listened with tears streaming down her face, apologizing sincerely and promising to put in the effort to make things right. When the session ended, Caleb felt strangely lighter, like some of the burden had been lifted off his shoulders. As they walked out of the office, Olivia hesitated before reaching for his hand. Caleb didn't pull away, but he didn't squeeze back either. It was progress, albeit slow and uncertain. Back at home, they prepared dinner together in near silence. Caleb knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long while, he felt a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, they could find a way through the mess they had created. Over the next few weeks, Caleb and Olivia attended counseling sessions regularly. Each time they dug a little deeper into the pain, the misunderstandings, and the fears that had built up over the years. Caleb found himself slowly opening up more, admitting that he felt inadequate and humiliated when Olivia suggested an open marriage. He shared how it made him feel like he wasn't enough, like their life together was somehow lacking. Olivia, on the other hand, confessed how she had been consumed by a need to feel alive again, how Jenna's stories of freedom and excitement had twisted her perception of happiness. She admitted that she was naive and irresponsible to let someone else's idea of a successful marriage interfere with their own. One evening after a session, as they sat on the front porch sipping iced tea, Olivia broke the silence. "I've been thinking about Jenna," she said quietly. Caleb raised an eyebrow. "What about her?" Olivia hesitated, clearly gathering her thoughts. "I realize now how toxic her influence was. I thought she was trying to help me find happiness, but really, she was just projecting her own problems onto me. I should have seen that sooner." Caleb took a sip of his drink, mulling over her words. "It's easier to blame her," he replied. "But at the end of the day, you made the choice to listen to her. You're not a puppet. You're accountable for your own actions." Olivia's eyes dropped to the ground, and she nodded solemnly. "I know," she whispered. "It's on me. I let myself get caught up in her version of happiness without thinking about what it would cost." The conversation hung heavy between them, but Caleb found himself feeling slightly less tense. For once, Olivia wasn't making excuses or trying to justify her actions. She was owning up to the pain she had caused. One Saturday morning, as Caleb was working on the car in the driveway, Marcus pulled up with his truck and hopped out, giving a casual wave. "Still got that rattle under the hood?" Marcus called out. Caleb grinned. "Yeah, I can't figure out where it's coming from." Marcus leaned against the fender, folding his arms. "You look less miserable than usual," Marcus noted with a smirk. Caleb shrugged. "Counseling's been not as bad as I thought. I guess talking it out helps. Never thought I'd be doing that kind of stuff, but it's making me see things differently." Marcus looked impressed. "Gotta admit, I didn't think you'd go for it. Thought you'd just pack up and leave." Caleb wiped his hands on a rag, sighing. "I thought about it. Hell, I still do sometimes. But I owe it to the kids to at least try. I don't want them growing up in a broken home if there's even a chance of fixing things." Marcus nodded, respecting his friend's resolve. "You're a better man than most. A lot of guys would have just called it quits." Caleb gave a half smile. "I guess I'm stubborn like that." Later that evening, Olivia called Caleb into the living room with an uncertain look on her face. "Can I ask you something?" she ventured. Caleb nodded, wary. "What if we renewed our vows?" she asked softly. "I know it's not a fix, and it doesn't erase the pain I caused. But I want to show you that I'm committed to rebuilding what we lost. I want to promise you all over again that I'll never take you for granted." Caleb was taken aback. He hadn't expected that suggestion. "You think that's going to change anything?" he asked bluntly. Olivia hesitated, her face falling. "No, but I thought it might be a step in the right direction. Something to symbolize starting over. A chance to make new promises, with honesty this time." He considered her words carefully. Part of him wanted to scoff at the idea, but another part of him felt a strange sense of possibility. "I don't know, Olivia," he admitted. "Renewing vows doesn't mean much if the foundation is still cracked. We can't just slap a Band-Aid on this." Olivia nodded, understanding his caution. "I know. I wanted to try something that might remind us of why we started this journey in the first place. But I won't push it. It's just an idea." The idea lingered in Caleb's mind long after the conversation ended. The thought of starting over seemed both hopeful and terrifying. He didn't want to make the same mistake of rushing into something just to feel better. But at the same time, he couldn't ignore the part of him that wanted to find a way back to the life they had built. The following week, during another counseling session, Dr. Parker brought up the idea of renewal. "Symbolic gestures can be powerful," she said, "but they're most effective when they come from a place of genuine intention, not as a way to mask unresolved hurt." Caleb took a deep breath, glancing at Olivia. I just don't want to make another promise I can't keep," he admitted. Dr. Parker nodded. "That's understandable. Perhaps instead of focusing on a big gesture, you could work on small, consistent actions that rebuild trust over time. Sometimes healing comes from the little things: showing up, being present, choosing to communicate rather than shutting down." Caleb nodded slowly, realizing the truth in her words. Maybe he didn't need a grand gesture. Maybe he just needed to give Olivia the chance to prove herself, one day at a time. That evening, as they sat on the back porch watching the sunset, Olivia reached out and took Caleb's hand. This time, he didn't pull away. He let her hold it, feeling the warmth of her touch, and for the first time in a long while, It didn't feel forced. "I'm willing to work on this," he said quietly, "but it has to be real. No shortcuts. No pretending everything's okay when it's not." Olivia squeezed his hand gently. "I promise. I'll keep fighting for us. I won't take the easy way out again." They sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned shades of pink and gold. Caleb knew it wasn't a magical fix, but it was something, an inch forward after months of being stuck. He didn't know what the future held, but he was willing to see where it took them, one cautious step at a time. A few months passed, and life slowly started to feel a bit more normal. Caleb and Olivia continued their counseling sessions, and little by little they rebuilt some semblance of connection. It wasn't perfect, far from it, but it was progress. Caleb found himself letting his guard down gradually, allowing Olivia to show her dedication through consistent actions rather than grand promises. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, they sat together on the couch sharing a quiet moment. Olivia hesitated before speaking. "You know," she began softly, "I never thought I'd come so close to losing you. It took almost losing everything to realize how badly I'd messed up." Caleb gave a small nod, not looking at her directly, but not pushing her away either. "You can't just erase what happened," he said, his tone gentle but firm. "But I see that you're trying. I see that you're putting in the effort, and I appreciate it." She smiled faintly, wiping at a tear that threatened to spill. "I know I can't take back what I did, but I promise, I'll never take you for granted again. I've learned my lesson the hard way, and I'm willing to keep proving myself to you, no matter how long it takes." Caleb looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in a while, he felt a hint of genuine warmth. "I'm not saying I'm over it," he admitted, "but I'm willing to keep trying. I want us to work. I want our family to stay together. But it's going to take time for me to fully trust you again." Olivia nodded, understanding the gravity of his words. "That's fair. I'll earn your trust back one step at a time. No shortcuts. No pretending." In the weeks that followed, Olivia continued to be consistent. She didn't just apologize. She changed her behavior. She cut ties with Jenna, realizing that her influence had been toxic and damaging to their marriage. She started focusing on their family, spending more quality time with Caleb and the kids, and being present in the relationship instead of constantly seeking excitement elsewhere. One Saturday morning, as they were preparing breakfast together, Max and Lily ran into the kitchen with excitement. "Dad, Mom," Max shouted, "we found an old photo album in the attic." Caleb wiped his hands and followed the kids into the living room, where they had spread the album open on the floor. It was filled with pictures from their early years together, vacations, anniversaries, the day they brought Lily home from the hospital. Olivia knelt beside them, her eyes misting over as she flipped through the pages. "I forgot we had these," she murmured, tracing her fingers over a photo of their wedding day. Caleb sat down beside her, unable to help the small smile that crept onto his face. "We were just kids back then," he said with a chuckle. Olivia nodded. "Young and fearless. I wish I could go back and tell that girl to never lose sight of what really matters." Max held up a picture of Caleb holding a tiny swaddled baby Lily. "Is that me?" Lily asked with wide eyes. Caleb laughed. "That's you, all right. You were so tiny back then." As they flipped through the album, Caleb felt a sense of nostalgia wash over him. The memories reminded him of why he had fought so hard to save their marriage. Despite the pain, despite the betrayal, he knew deep down that love was still there, buried beneath the hurt, but not completely gone. That evening, after putting the kids to bed, Olivia approached him again, this time with a different kind of resolve. "Caleb," she started, her voice steady, "I want to renew our vows, not just as a gesture, but as a commitment to never take you for granted again. I want to make new promises, ones that are built on honesty and respect." Caleb considered her words carefully. "It's not going to be easy," he warned. "We can't just sweep the past under the rug." Olivia nodded firmly. "I know. That's why I want to do it right this time. I want to build something stronger, not just pretend like nothing happened. I want us to move forward, not backward." After a long moment, Caleb finally nodded. "All right, if we're going to do this, it has to be real. No more hiding feelings. No more letting things fester." Olivia smiled through her tears, relieved that he was willing to give their relationship a second chance. A few weeks later, they held a small, intimate vow renewal ceremony in their backyard. Just the four of them: Caleb, Olivia, Max, and Lily. As they stood under the twinkling lights, Caleb took Olivia's hands and looked into her eyes. "This time," he said softly, "I promise to speak up when I'm hurting, to communicate instead of shutting down. I promise to protect our family and to love you through the hard times and the good." Olivia wiped away tears as she replied, "And I promise to never take you for granted again. I promise to put us first, to never let outside influences sway my heart. I will earn your trust back, one day at a time." As they sealed their renewed vows with a gentle kiss, Max and Lily clapped enthusiastically, oblivious to the deeper meaning behind the ceremony. For them, it was just a celebration of love and family. That night, as they sat together on the back porch, Caleb wrapped his arm around Olivia's shoulders, pulling her close. He knew they still had a long way to go, but he felt hope blossoming inside him. Maybe forgiveness wouldn't come easily, but the willingness to try was enough for now. They watched the stars together, the weight of the past slowly lifting, replaced by a cautious sense of optimism. Caleb knew that love wasn't just about grand gestures or dramatic moments. It was about choosing each other, day after day, even when things got hard. And tonight, for the first time in a long while, he felt like they just might make it. What would you do if you were in Caleb's position? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more shocking betrayal stories and satisfying revenge. Your support means the world to us.